Hi, Luke. Hi, Ash.
Howdy.
Hey, yeah.
Good to see you both. Thanks again, Luke, for the message and encouraging us with John 21, just your thoughts there and helping us to see about what Jesus' not end, but the end of his ministry, if you will, on earth with us was and through John's eyes. So I really appreciate that. And I feel like you asked some really good questions for us to wrestle with. And that's the point of this conversation, is just to keep kind of dialoguing a bit further about that and just tease out maybe some more things that don't get to be part of a sermon. And so many of you may or may not know, Luke mentioned it, but he's doing his internship with us at Blockhouse Bay Baptist, and we're glad for him being doing that. But in that, he's been interacting with Ashmore and doing some soundboarding. Is that right? It sounds like bad waterboarding, but soundboarding with her. And so I'll let Ash ask kind of the first question as we discover a bit more about John with Luke.
Yeah, Luke, just keen to hear you explore for us a little bit more. You touched on it at the start of your sermon. You said it's really weird that Peter and the disciples are fishing. Tell us why. Why is that random?
Yeah, I didn't go a whole lot of the distance with that, did I? Yeah, I mean, if you read the passage, you'll see that Peter's the one who initiates this kind of fishing trip, and for me, I find it kind of bizarre that I think it's 7 of the disciples are going fishing, just a matter of days or weeks after Jesus has died, resurrected, and has appeared again. You know, you'd think that their behavior may be a bit different, but I think it kind of speaks to like this place and space that Peter finds himself in. Where he's kind of just had this traumatic thing happen to him, not only in terms of what happened to Jesus, but also in terms of his own inner turmoil and inner world, and it's been kind of rocked. And I think, this it kind of makes for this weird situation where he's just defaulting back to what he knows, and it's like, well, actually, I'm a fisherman. Before Jesus picked me up 3 years ago, I'd go fishing, and that's what I'm going to do now. And it's just kind of, yeah, I think it kind of speaks to this mindset that he's found himself in. And I think we all get a bit muddled, when push comes to shove, don't we? So I know I do. So yeah, I mean, I don't know what. Yeah.
Is that something that you had thought as well, Ash, in terms of just reading John 21?
Yeah, I think so as well. I think it is. It is a bit strange that we see them back at this kind of pre 3 years with Jesus stage. We find them at the start of the gospel fishing. And then, here, like, Jesus has appeared already. Like, I think you're right. We should expect that they're about to, like, go the apostles. But I think it fits really well with what your sermon is about as well, Luke, that Peter is in the midst of this, like, discouraged phase that he's denied Jesus. And then as Jesus comes and reinstates him and says, like, gives him this new command to follow in a deeper, like, more robust, kind of fuller way, like, that is then the thing that, like, launches him to go and be like the apostle Peter that we see in Acts. So yeah, I think there's something important about what Jesus is doing for Peter that kind of shifts his vocation, that shifts his he's still kind of fishing, but like, he's no longer this fisherman. Everything has changed because of Jesus.
Yeah. I think one of the things as you're talking and Lucas is listening to your sermon that struck me as you made mention of it, but there's the humanness. So not only are they fishing, but Jesus then is at the fire, like sitting there, hanging out, kind of waiting for them on the beach. And then you have this conversation between Jesus and Peter and John, which they're doing what they typically do, is arguing about what's going to happen to whom in what way. Like, it's a competition already again. But you kind of mentioned that there's this human sense. And John's gospel starts off on a cosmic level. The Word became flesh, and this life of the world, the one that created everything, is coming down. And then at the end of John's gospel, it's not in the heavens, it's at a fireplace with fish and confused, muddled people. Why do you think John ends his gospel in that way?
Yeah, that's a good question. Thanks. You're welcome. Hey, you're right. Like the gospel kind of starts with like the cosmos and like the whole, I hear people say supposedly the book of John is like this high Christology is what people say. It's all about Jesus, and it's all about who he is and what he is. He's the Lord. He's the Word became flesh. And we see that through his works, through his teaching. And I think like the interesting thing about John 21 is it's like, well, what does it mean for us that Jesus is the Lord, that Jesus is the Word became flesh, that he did die for us, and takes all these things we know about Jesus and then puts it in front of Peter and says, well, this is what it means for Peter, actually, that forgiveness. I mean, it's like the first forgiven sin, I suppose, post the cross. Is like, this is one of the first things we see, like that, this is the real outworking of what Christ has done for us. And we see like a specific example of that. So yeah, I think like the thing I like about John 21 is it frames us in relation to Christ and to the Christ that we've been learning about for 20 chapters.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Ash, do you have any further thoughts on that?
I agree. I think it's awesome. It is this moment of like, so what do you do about this Jesus that we've discovered? And I think all throughout John, we start with the divinity, but we also encounter this really human man. Like it is the Word made flesh. Like Jesus is at the same time divine and human. So I don't think it's like weird that John ends with a really human moment. But yeah, I agree. I think it's this kind of beautiful like moment of like, for Peter, this is what it looks like that Jesus is Lord. And I think it leaves us with a question, like for us as other disciples, what does it mean that Jesus is this Word made flesh Lord?
Yeah. No, Luke, I really appreciate it. I think when you're talking about the follow me piece, and that's that kind of the reinstatement of Peter, it kind of follows on that idea that Jesus is being very real to him about where he's at. Like I felt that in terms of as you're talking through it, of like Peter so needed to hear that, so needed to hear it a couple times because he had made a mess. And I appreciated that you put us in place with Peter as well. Like we are the ones that also need to be reinstated, if you will, on a regular basis. But one of the things that you said, I think that just kind of kept striking me was that Jesus says, follow me and feed my sheep. And that's specific to Peter. There's something that's going to happen to him that he's going to play a particular role. But at the same time, we're also called to be people who follow Jesus and love one another. That's one of John's, and lay down our life for. Do you think that the way that Jesus does this in relation to Peter is in a way Jesus showing us how to feed sheep, how to help people follow him? Is Jesus being shepherdly as he reinstates Peter?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked a bit about how Jesus is the true shepherd. The shepherd that is better than and is truer than any other shepherd, I suppose.
Yeah.
And my sense here is that when Jesus talks about follow me, Peter's witnessed all these things with Christ, and including Christ's forgiveness, and including these things that Jesus is saying now, and all of this, as Jesus reveals himself to Peter, Peter is learning more about what it means to step into that calling. And so for Peter specifically, it is a pastoral calling. As he moves forward.
Yep.
But this is like a pastoral moment for Jesus as well. And part of the way Jesus relates to Peter kind of hopefully informed the way that Peter relates to others.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, there is a sense that, that as Peter is fed, he's learning how to feed others. I'm certain of it. Ash, did you have anything to add? Or?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's true of how we see Jesus always. That like he is the good shepherd always, not just in John 10, right? But I think there's something particularly beautiful about his reinstatement of Peter right at the end here, like as he gives him this kind of really big task for Peter specifically, but this kind of general call to be like a disciple, to follow Jesus. Like that feels like a beautiful way to end, because like Peter's gonna screw up again. I think you said this, Luke. Like this is not a like quick fix. But these words feel really powerful because he's going to need to hear them again and again, just as he does, just as we do as well. And I think that's part of, Jesus continuing to be a shepherd for us. I think it's part of the role of him pouring out the Spirit upon us now as well. That, like these words of like, yep, you screwed up, but like, come on, keep going. Like grace is poured out, forgiveness is poured out, restoration happens. Like we need that all the time.
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to finish then. I think that's really, it's good for all of us to keep hearing that. And as Luke, as you've been able to, I'll pick on you again just for the fun of it, right? But as you study this and you're wrestling with this reality that Peter gets reinstated, is forgiven, is invited to follow and to take a role, what did you find particularly encouraging to you at this time, as you're studying this and wrestling through even your own calling, but also your just continual journey with Jesus?
Yeah, I mean, there's many layers to to kind of unpack there, I suppose. For those of you who don't know me, like this journey to return to Carey as a student, there's a bit of like reinstatement involved there, I suppose, where actually God is like, okay, Luke, you've been on a journey and you've been learning and you've made some mistakes, and I still, am calling you into, journeying with me further, and that's super encouraging. Reading this text, it's like, oh, there's some parallels to kind of the grand narrative of my life, I suppose. But then also like, in a more kind of condensed kind of moment, there's this COVID situation going on in the world, and I don't know about you guys, but being stuck into my house, I'm kind of coming face to face with a lot of my my flaws, and my my kind of inner world gets a lot of attention at the moment, and this situation, this kind of rut that Peter finds himself in. It's like actually there's elements of that I'm relating to right now, and knowing that Christ is kind of continually extending his hand out to me and saying, actually, Luke, I'm going to continue calling you to follow me, despite where you're at or how you're feeling right now. That's super encouraging to me, and personally, I suppose. So yeah,
that's cool. I'm glad to hear.
Sorry, I've got 2 dogs.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah. Did you want to add anything, Ash, before we kind of wrap up here?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is just a cool, it's a cool way to end the Gospel of John. We've been traveling through this for a little bit now. Yeah, as Luke said, kind of while we've been in level 4. And I think this commission to like go and follow Jesus is a really cool way to finish this series. We're going to explore that further, of course, as we keep going. But I feel like that wraps up the gospel really well for us. That actually John has been telling us this story of who Jesus is, of the way that he's made himself known, and it ends with this call to follow Jesus.
Yeah.
And we get to decide what that looks like. And I think that's a helpful piece for me, at least in the midst of level 4 or level 3. What is it to still be a disciple, even when the world is different? Like, how do I love the people that I'm with, the people that kind of part of our local or global community.
Mhm.
That call to follow Jesus doesn't change because the circumstances of our world does. It means we need to be more creative. It's different, but this feels like a cool way to finish.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, thanks. I think I'm looking forward to that. I think the connection you guys have made is true. Is that as John closes up his gospel, like Matthew, Mark, and Luke do as well, that there's a sense of what are you going to do? Where are you going to go with this? And as we look forward to next week, that we jump into the book of Acts, which is Luke's second part of, not this Luke, but the gospel writer Luke. In terms of this the story about what happens then as those who follow Jesus first, if you will, how that works its way out, and some of the challenges, the ups and downs, and at the same time, this kind of faithfulness of Christ to his followers, that he keeps reinstating them, if you will, and keeps inviting them and the world to follow him, and what that looks like. So I'm looking forward to that, and grateful that we can walk in that sense that Jesus keeps saying, "You're mine. Keep following me, and I'll be with you as well." So thanks, appreciate it, and church, be well, and we will see you soon.